Hi, everybody from Literature 221. I wanted to give you just a quick overview of the novel, My Sister the Serial Killer, before you start reading it. It's not a complicated novel, but it is complex. And my goal here is just to give you a few slides to just kind of cover a few things before you start reading to help make your reading experience more fruitful and to prevent you from hopefully having to go back and reread any parts of it. So let's get going. This is the first chapter of the novel. A lot of the chapters are very short, not as short as this one, but I wanted to show you this because it's a great first chapter and it has an excellent hook with that word again. You know, it makes you want to keep reading, and a lot of the chapters are set up this way. This novel is very easy to read. The storyline pulls you along. And despite its topic, which is about a girl who kills her boyfriends, the novel's kind of irreverent. It's even funny at points. But so it's easy to just get caught up in it and just kind of keep reading. I imagine that some of you will be like, oh, look, I can finish this in a week. I'm just going to do that. And that's okay. But again, I just want to set you up so you kind of know what you should be paying attention to. So don't be fooled about how easy it is. Every now and then stop and ask yourself some questions. Why is she doing this? Why is she telling me this now? Why are these two chapters following each other? And although they might give you a few spoilers with the novel, I strongly suggest that you look at the discussion questions before you read, because it will help you figure out in that reading for that day, what should you be paying attention to. So again, I don't think there'll be any huge spoilers there, but I think it's good to look at those ahead of time. Now, these are our basic, the most important characters. Coretta is the narrator. It's a first-person novel. She tells the story. Ayoola is her sister. She's the serial killer. The story takes place in Lagos, Nigeria, but it's a very, contemporary city. I don't think you're going to have any issues with that. There is some Nigerian pidgin in it, kind of a mixture of Nigerian and English. If you ever want to look up or know what some of those phrases are, you can Google them. It's very easy. And just a little preview, the chapter that's called MAGA, M-A-G-A, refers to a Nigerian pidgin word, and that is a real word. Braithwaite did not make that up for this novel. MAGA is a real word in Nigerian pidgin, and it means exactly what she says it means. Now, I wanted to show you just a couple of excerpts from the early chapters, just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. If you want to pause the video for a minute and actually read this, and then I'll talk about what I see there. Okay, so what I would say you want to pay attention to when you read a chapter like this is the attitude that Coretta is expressing about most people. That most people indiscriminately use bleach. They don't know. They're kind of naive. They're ignorant. They assume things about it they assume things that aren't accurate. They never take the time to look at this. They never take the time to read this or take a closer look. This is who Coretta is. She's very intelligent. She's very confident, and she's not afraid to make people aware of that. This is her character. And you can see that in the whole novel. But I just wanted to show you again some early excerpts to see with her words and how she narrates the ways you can see this. Again, this is also from chapter 2. If you want to pause and read it, and then I'll talk to you about what's there. So this is Coretta describing what she was doing before her sister called that first chapter saying, I've done it again. And I think the thing you want to pay attention to is, she has planned for herself the perfect evening. Everything is laid out perfectly. Everything's ready to go. She even has the movie paused just right, and then she's violently disrupted. And I think it's that word that she uses to describe her phone ringing. It's violent. She feels like, everything that she has planned so carefully has been torn away from her. And again, this is kind of, a theme in Coretta's life, that she tries to be so careful. She tries to be so purposeful. She tries to be so perfect in many ways. And it feels like life is against her and people are against her all the time. And not just Ayoola is against her. Again, now this is from chapter 3, and that one line that's underlined, I just wanted to call attention to. While she took a bath, I set the dress she had been wearing on fire. Let me read that line to you again. While she took a bath, I set the dress she had been wearing on fire. Think about the difference between that line in a line where she could have easily have just said, I burned her dress. There's a real difference. There's something very weighty about the way she describes it. I set the dress she had been wearing on fire. There's this kind of sense of personal action and achievement, that she wants to convey, of how much she is doing here. So, those are just a few little excerpts, tiny little things from the book, but to show you that if you slow down and you pay attention to those words or those passages, you get a lot more out of the story. And a couple of other things about, Coretta, and this is just to kind of set you up for your early reading. As I said, she's extremely competent, and it's easy to make fun of her, as her colleagues do at work. She's a nurse. They think of her as she's too strict, she's too orderly, she's too uptight. And one thing I'd ask you to think about as you're reading the early chapters, why has she become this way? What in her past has caused her to develop these traits? And does she maintain them throughout the entire novel? When does she experience some weakness in her competence and in her confidence, throughout the novel, because those are going to be important points if you see her wavering a little bit and suddenly feeling not confident or feeling not competent to do something. And I want you to look carefully to it, how she's treated by others. I do have this line here that says, these are traits that are often admired in a man. And I think that's the thing about Coretta. If she were a man, everyone would admire her. Everyone would talk highly of her. She's not a man, and instead they tend to make fun of her. They tend to, her coworkers call her a bitch because she's too strict. And this is partly the world she lives in, and how does that help explain her a little bit? And this is a pattern that seems to follow her throughout her life. She does everything a little bit above and beyond, and instead of getting rewarded for that, she's constantly kind of, not necessarily punished, that's a strong word, but she's kind of, she suffers setbacks. Her own competence kind of sets her up to be ridiculed or criticized by people. And I did want to mention, there are a lot of people that she works with at the hospital, with a lot of, names to kind of keep track of. The two men at the hospital that you do want to pay attention to in these early readings are Tade and Muhtar. Tade is a doctor that she works with, and Muhtar is a patient. And pay attention to them. They will become important as the novel goes on. And then finally, just one last thing, and these are some themes just for the early chapters to be thinking about. And the only one I want to say anything about here is that first line here. We're talking about Coretta versus Ayoola and Coretta and Ayoola. Coretta and Ayoola a lot of times seem to be at cross purposes, beating heads, in conflict with one another. And look at that. What seems to cause the conflict between the two of them? When you do get flashbacks, do you see from flashbacks to when they were younger? Do you see some of the the roots and the seeds of that the conflict as it exists now when they're adults? How does the conflict between them change as time goes on? Do they have conflicts about different things in the novel? And a lot of the first part of the novel is set up with them kind of butting heads, and and Cayuta especially being completely at cross purposes and feeling very frustrated with Ayoola. Look at what happens, and this happens a little bit more after the middle of the novel. When do they start to become more of a team? When do they work together? When is it Coretta and Ayoola? And not Coretta versus Ayoola. And you'll see this in the flashbacks as well. Some of the flashbacks to their childhood where they're butting heads, but also some flashbacks to their childhood when they're working together. They're working in tandem for the same goal. So that's an important thing to pay attention to as the novel goes through. And then you see a couple of other things there. Beauty, there's some points about beauty. And what does it mean to live in a patriarchal society? Nigeria, probably a little bit more patriarchal than we might think of America as being. But what does it mean to live in a society where men, always seem to get the benefit of the doubt, and are always accorded a bit more of everything? I think that most people would say, well, that's true of America as well. I think the difference for Nigeria is Nigeria admits it freely and openly. Yes, men are more important. Men deserve this, men deserve that. So what's it like to live in that kind of a society where there's not just unspoken rules like that, like you might feel we have here in America, but they're actually out in the open? This is just the beginnings for the novel. There's a lot of other stuff that's going to come up. There's a lot of other things that I would like to mention, but I'm not going to mention right now. And as you're reading, if you have any questions or problems with the novel, especially on the first day, I put a folder in the discussion area that's just questions. So if you are confused about anything, if you just want to get something straight, please put your questions there, because other students might have a similar question. And if you're the one that's willing to ask it and I can answer it, you'll be helping not just yourself, you'll be helping them. I feel that once you get past the first day, everything will start clicking for you and you'll just be able to read very easily. But initially getting into the novel might be a little bit tough. Have fun with it. I hope all of you are staying safe and staying well. I miss you very much, and we'll talk again soon.